a choice right now, between fear and love. It's just a rock.
Out of the dark night of ignorance and into the shining light of truth.
Expounding reality.
A population of citizens capable of critical thinking.
We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are.
There's a level of reality where everything dissolves into an ocean of energy.
We empower our experience by insisting on our authenticity.
That's very profound. Very.
Expanding reality.
All right, welcoming to the show, Soul Luckman. So cool to have you, brother. You are just awesome. You're prolific. You've got all kinds of cool shit going on. Your new book, Get Out of Here Alive, we're going to talk about your Substack and all of the rest of it are going to be linked down below. Before we get into our conversation here, go ahead and let the audio-only audience know that we do have a creative expansion artist joining us. Derek Bastian is joining, and if you caught the episode 300 for the video version here, I just went ahead and grabbed it. He made this thing live with us on the 300th episode, this beautiful bird, and then sent it signed because he's just that guy. He's incredible. So linked again all the ways to find Soul, but also our incredibly cool artist, and check that free video version linked down there in the show description, along with our gentleman here. And thank you both for joining us. This is so cool. So cool. Soul, your work is incredible. You are one of the top dudes in this, man. So let's get to know you a little bit better, brother. If you don't mind, for the audience's sake, just a little bit more about you, my friend.
Yeah, gosh, I've been around on this planet for a few years, so there's quite a bit to say, but I have a background in academics and in teaching, in literature, and in writing, creative writing. I began as a novelist, and then I got sick and had to drop out of graduate school, went on a kind of holistic therapy, wander hard, trying to get over this crazy autoimmune condition that I had gotten from having some medical interventions for travel, if you know what I mean. And then I basically went down rabbit hole after rabbit hole looking for solutions to my health issue, got into energy work, allergy elimination, qigong, various sound healing modalities, began looking at the relationship between genetics, DNA, and sound, and bowel sequences and crazy things, and eventually was able to heal myself. And that was a pretty amazing thing when that happened. I was able to just get it right somehow, and that changed my life dramatically. That was over 2 decades ago, and that began my real work, which was in the healing and consciousness field. And since then, I've written several more books, and including The World Cult and You, which was the last book I wrote, which is on my Substack exclusively, and that's about the idea that the world is a giant set of nested cults designed to harvest people's energy, essentially. And that we must start by recognizing how it works, and then we can actually take steps to take back our energy and change our personal lives and possibly collective experience. And that book then segued into The World Cult and You, which is about, The World Cult and You segued into Get Out of Here Alive, which is about the idea that it's possible to raise your personal energy to such an extent that immortality becomes an achievable goal. And I discuss strategies for approaching that path.
When you say immortality, do you mean immortality as in you're here forever? Like you're immortal as in a vampire, like you can never die, but you are sort of stuck in this corporeal form or this physical form?
No, I don't mean that at all. Although there are people, I believe, who do that. And for example, in the works of Carlos Castaneda, there's a figure called the Death Defier, and the Death Defier is doing exactly that. So that can happen. It does happen. And that is a risk for people who, you might call them alchemists or inner alchemists who go down this path. They sometimes get trapped here in a way, and they end up not leaving for various reasons. And they do become somewhat vampiric or, living some kind of a strange undead life. That does happen. But what I'm talking about is actually being able to choose your death in a conscious fashion. And when you die, you step out of your corporeal body into your dream body, which is a replica of the body, and that is able to travel essentially eternally in the realm of dreams, which is everything is the realm of dreams, including this reality. But I'm talking about what shamans would call the dark sea of awareness. That is the Nahual in shamanism, where we do go when we dream and that sort of thing. But it's far vaster than just our personal dreams. It is eternity and immortality all wrapped in one.
I love how we just get into this. Okay, so what about projection protection? Let's say you get out of your body, you're now in your dream body. Is there just another as above, so below, to where there's sort of anglerfish and traps and entities that can trap you and get you somewhere? Is there any hard lessons that you learn from transferring to your dream body that you can help us out with here so we don't get trapped in something when we do figure that out?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. To back up and punt a little bit, the idea that we're just talking about something you do in your dream body when you run into something like a parasitic entity, for example, this does not just apply to stepping into your dream body. Our world is based on this. Our world is controlled by an archontic hive consciousness, by a being I like to call the great parasite, or the dragon. I call it the dragon in Get Out of Here Alive, because I'm really using a motif of the hero's journey. So you're basically facing the dragon and getting past the dragon on your way out of here, and you go in to get out. You don't worry about the external, you worry about the internal, and that allows you to basically transcend the matrix or this construct. So we deal with these entities all the time on a daily basis. All the structures we see in our world, whether that's taxation or control structures of various kinds, all of these are hallmarks of the dragon that's using its block chain to tie us in a net or a web for controlling our consciousness and loosing our energy. This is how it works. This is our world. So the things that I'm talking about actually have a lot of relevance to just our daily lives and how we can shepherd and protect our energy and know when we are being parasitized or loosed by minions of the dragon or of the great parasite, for example. But when you go out traveling and you're basically doing mental projection, the first thing I would suggest is that, unless you are very accomplished, it's probably not a great idea to just jump straight into lucid dreaming, where you actually try to wake up in the dream, because that can put you in strange circumstances where you aren't fully in control. You don't really know where you are. You don't know what the circumstances are, and you can be compromised that way. So the idea of inner alchemy, as I discuss it in this new book, is that you learn to essentially lucid dream without ever going to sleep. Thus, there is no need to wake up in the dream.
You hear about these practices here, and it seems like that this place is some sort of training ground for that, right? If it was like sort of a spiritual realm out there and it was full of these parasitic entities that just gobble souls up, one may say that maybe an area that we create, sort of a safe zone, sort of a Switzerland from all this fucking shit, where then you can train, or be trained or whatever, or know how to spot these different entities and these frequencies, and your discernment's just sharpened, and you either recycle here until that happens, or you move on due to the distillation process. I feel that's what's going on here. It's like a distillation process. And those with eyes to see and those who can see when shown are the ones sort of alchemizing here to bump around with those who can't, and the fixed structures in this place to give us some sort of relativity, right? And that's what it's all about. That's why things suck here. It's just, if you automatically knew it, we wouldn't need the examples around us. And so things suck here because we need to learn by looking at something and going, oh, I prefer something else. And then that makes you question that, or many other rabbit holes beyond that. But what's beautiful about this place, and my question to you then is what do you think this thing is? Like, what's the point? Is the dragon more of like a professor here to make sure that we learn our lessons? Or is it some sort of entity that doesn't belong here, and it's a bastardization of this beautiful place that would be heaven without it?
Yeah. Okay. There's a lot going on there, but I can answer that multifaceted question by telling the story of how I believe this place got to where it is. Maybe that would help.
Perfect. Yes.
Where I'm coming from. So basically, if you can just suspend your disbelief as a listener and just take this in as a story. The story goes something like this: we were a networked species in the realm of the unconscious mind at one time. So this would have been when we were living in harmony with Mother Earth. This would have been perhaps a golden age of sorts. We were much more tribal. We had more psychic abilities. This is the period of time that the Aborigines would refer to as the dream time, and it went on for a very long time. And then some part of us within the dream time desired to have a more individualized experience of ourselves. And when we began dreaming that way, because all is a dream, we brought in the serpent to our garden, of that perfect garden that we were living in on this beautiful planet. That is the serpent that's recorded in the Bible, for example, and that is the dragon, or it's also the great parasite. And we made a deal with it to accept its conscious mind as our operating system, so that we could have that experience of individuality. And in exchange, it basically was allowed to submerge our unconscious mind, that vast reservoir of the unconscious that people like Jung write about. What's down in there? Well, all of this power and knowledge and magic is in the unconscious, but we were separated from it. So we entered what Castaneda would call the place of reason, this very limited logical zone and this tonal. And we adopted the dragon's own mind as our mind, and we think of that as our mind, but it's actually a foreign operating system. It's like Microsoft Word on your computer that you don't control, right? It's not your operating system.
Well, this makes me feel better whenever you hear something in your head that tells you like kill yourself or something. Is that the dragon and not something else? This sort of idea is not to listen to your head and to follow your heart. Is that where the dragon's speaking to you?
Absolutely. That voice in your head, if you have not done the inner work, is absolutely the dragon. 100%. So it's basically giving you an inverted script about what's important in the world and in your life and in your spiritual development. So you can start by just turning everything 180 degrees, as a working protocol. So just turn it around and you'll probably be closer to what will actually benefit you.
Yeah, because that's the hard, you're so far away that this seems like the best option for you. And it's a voice in your head, like an alarm going off saying, this is how out of balance you are,
Right. So imagine the scenario where you've got this operating system, you've been separated from your unconscious mind, and you are navigating in this construct that is controlled by the dragon, which is kind of like the mind flayer or something like that in Stranger Things.
That's
all right.
Cool. Yeah.
And it is able to harvest your energy while also controlling you until you put a stop to it, basically. And it's able to turn the world into a very negative place until enough people begin taking their energy back, because it's possible to actually pull energy in from the dragon and weaken it, which is very cool.
That is cool.
People get really stuck on when you begin looking at this place as a classroom. I like to call it a dojo too, like a really kick-ass, tough love sensei who is the dragon. And by the way, we invited the dragon into this world, at least our species did. So we are responsible for dreaming it into our existence. This isn't about perpetuating our victimhood. That's what the dragon wants you to do. It wants you to be in a soul trap. It wants you to be stuck here. Those bad archons and those terrible mental parasites, they just came and they got me and they took over. It's all bullshit. This is all the dragons speak. Anyone talking about that kind of thing is doing the work of the dragon. Because we are here to be empowered. That's the lesson. And it's actually ultimately the dragon's lesson. And it gives it to us with, a hard left hook sometimes and a drop kick.
Dude, you're connecting so many things here, Saul. I'm so grateful that we're talking, dude, because, okay, whenever you look at stuff like this, yes, man, and I hear you. So whenever I see things like this, what I think of them as is signposts on a mountain that we're climbing, right? And so, but think of the mountain also, you make all 4 cardinal directions as you spiral up this mountain that you are walking physically as a metaphor. You're going to hit the north side of the mountain many times as you go up, right? And on the north side of that mountain, it offers you some different perspectives. We could categorize those in the phases of astrology, or you could just think of them as north, south, east, west. Something interesting happens there. Maybe something awesome, not so awesome, shitty, a little bit better, and awesome, right? And you can kind of think it's going to go in that order. But what's interesting is you can also think of it in frequency of direction and what will be able to motivate you forward. Because a lot of times I see people get so upset. You're not doing this. I'm not saying that. What I'm talking about here are the people that get so upset at other people spreading misinformation and they're leading people astray and all this other stuff. But what I hear from you is the same damn thing I've been talking about for a long time here, man, is that the realm has a mind, or I say like a fog or a parasite. Like, again, to Castaneda's work, it in my mind looks like a fog that can take the shape of anything. That's why the realm is so subjective in nature. With people's experiences with UFO phenomena or paranormal or nothing, it's very on soul narrative with you, the person, because that's how a great teacher works. If you go into a math class and 10 kids don't understand the problem, that teacher can look at 10 individual children and speak to them in their own language and get them to wrap their minds around this concept in a variety of different ways. In the same way, the dragon does this as well. And this is why all the shitty things, air quotes, things that happen to you in life are the changes that you needed, right? How many of us can say that after something horrible, it wasn't way better and that we wouldn't have made the change had that horrible thing not had happened, right? The fuck around and find out nature of this universe, though, is what really we're going to get into as well. But I just wanted to pause here and say how awesome this is that we're getting to talk, because, again, I see this. I say it to my wife all the time. Everything's ninja training. She'll do something and I'll catch it real weird. And she'll go, wow, that was awesome. I go, everything's ninja training, but also it's a mental temple here. So everything's ninja training, man. You've got opportunities to sharpen discernment or fall for distraction all over the fucking place. And that's what the bread and circus is here to do. It's to distract the shit out of you. But at the other end of those are beautiful lessons. And sometimes they're hard. And that also dovetails with what you said. We call them feathers, bricks, and trucks. Have you ever heard of that?
Feathers, bricks, and trucks?
Yeah, that you get sort of a heads up from the universe or the dragon, if you want, in 3 different ways. You get a little light. Hey, you may want to pay attention to this. And if you don't listen to that, you get a brick to the fucking face. And if you don't listen to that, a truck comes in and hits you. And this is sort of what I'm talking about you being so far off of your soul narrative that the dragon needs to come at you really hard. But it seems to, again, be sort of in levels, because there are some things that I've achieved with feathers. And then I can pay attention to feathers a little bit better and don't need the bricks and trucks. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Carl Jung said the unconscious has 1,000 ways of snuffing out a meaningless existence with surprising swiftness. So if you can't figure it out soon enough, then you're kind of on the chopping block for the construct to recycle you, so that you have a better chance to come back and do it the right way.
Yes. Do you think that we took a lot of power away from the realm's ability to do that whenever we started making Tide Pods safer?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think that I think there's always an up and down movement in how powerful the dragon is and how restrictive the construct is. That probably accounts for the idea of different ages that we pass through. So, we are constantly in flux with how empowered we are relative to how powerful the dragon is. And that's just part of the game. I call it the game. We're on the game board here. And it's just one of the aspects of this particular game.
What do you think the point of this is?
Well, I liked what you said earlier. I think that we're here to become more conscious, more aware, and that's kind of what you were getting at. Ultimately, the way I would phrase it is that we're here to become masters of the imagination, because everything is a product of the imagination. The universe is a product of the divine imagination, and that's who we are. We are gods in training, learning how to become Imagineers, truly and utterly, so much so that we can invent not only immortality for ourselves, but worlds and other realities, and we can become gods creating universes. Shiva waking up and creating something entirely unprecedented.
I get so excited about this, but then I get frustrated as shit at the same time, Soul. And here's why. I went through, and I'm, just on the other side of this, my Uranus opposition peaks in August. If you're familiar with the midlife crisis, I think it's undernamed, but I went through, the hardcore hell, dude, the hardcore. I created it for myself. I read all the books about how we are in a soul trap. Howdy Mikowski was on. We talked all about it. And you can go there. Like, if you really want to see the system as that, I think that it absolutely will function that way for you. But the trick is to see it and get bored of it, honestly. And that's the interesting thing, is it got boring after a while.
I like that.
Yeah, so I needed to go in there and sit with it until I got over it. And I was just like, okay, well, there's nothing to do here anymore. And so I just kind of moved on. But where does spiritual bypassing and the ideas that you have about how empowering this place can be, where do those two things separate? Because that's something that got me, I feel, in my dark night of the soul, with spiritual bypassing my way out of hard truths that I couldn't see but thought I was doing work.
Yeah, well, a lot of this book, and I don't know if you've had a chance to read it, but the book is really a breakdown of strategies for unplugging, getting very clear on what's going on, getting into your own power, into your own silence, using tools like dance and movement and procrastination to increase your creativity and increase your power. While you're unplugging from the system. And then those are the not doings. And then there's doings, which have to do with things like shamanic recapitulation or inner alchemy, energy reabsorption, where you're actually spending time reabsorbing traumatic events from your past, taking all of that energy, putting it down into your solar plexus area or your womb if you're a woman, and packing it in there so that you eventually end up creating your own internal philosopher's stone. That's what it is. That's what the philosopher's stone is. So when people aren't willing to do the shadow work and the deep work and the energy work, and then they just want to pretend that they've arrived, that they're invulnerable to all of these things, but they actually haven't done that work. I always call bullshit on that, because that is spiritual bypass to me. It's absolutely not realistic. It doesn't happen that way. But you can do these miraculous and amazing things if you're willing to put in the time and effort.
It seemed inevitable in my case. Like, it seemed like I followed synchronicities to the T. Like, I didn't do anything wrong, which is what's so fascinating. I needed to spiritual bypass into the silly shit so that whenever my dark night came, rather, it knocked the dick right off me. It was crazy too, because we have a bunch of mutual friends and astrologers and stuff. And I live on my Pluto line, and I had my Pluto square here, and it was all this other like crazy bombardment of things that really looks like, if my soul set this up, it's some sadist shit, dude. It really set me up for like some, okay, man, you're really going to get it here, and you're going to think you're crushing it the entire time, because we all are, right? We all think that. We all think, oh man, I'm fucking doing great. I read this book, or I now have this new perspective. And you do for a little bit. But this is the thing about this place, man, is I've really adapted the philosophy that it's temporary truths. And that even soul, how you feel right now, how certain as shit you feel about the way you feel, it's going to change, man, because you don't have all the information, right? None of us do. We don't know where we are. Really, we can have insights and understandings and perspectives. And some people get told by Archangel Michaels and shit, but they don't talk to me. But what I'm saying is with new information, your mind's going to change, and things are just going to adapt and flow and alter and shift. But what's fascinating about this place is I don't think you can get it wrong. I really don't. Like, I think that because of the fuck around and find out nature, logically to me, you don't know all the answers. If you were born, if you did know everything and then you forgot when you got here, then that's a reason right there why you can just throw it to the wind, guys, because what you're bombarded with here is a new opportunity to reinvent yourself, is almost what it's like. It's almost not like God's in training. It's like God's untraining, because we're learning how to separate out from this really powerful state to a place where we should ideally be able to imagine the fuck out of cool things. But I don't know about you, but I don't feel like I'm able to create at the level at which a god should, and that sort of can make one bitter, because you get these ideas like, oh, you can just do whatever you want, create. We're here to imagine. And I love that. We're going to be masters of imagination. I don't disagree. It's just interesting when we reach these sort of intellectual tantrums, if I may. And it seems like I'm coming out of one, but I still have a little bit of fire in the belly.
Well, all of the intellectualizing, all of that is dragon mind speak, just so you know. And I agree with shamans who say that they're in the process of unlearning and forgetting. And I would insist that you can't necessarily get it wrong, because any experience can be used as catalyst for your own personal conscious evolution. And that's obvious, because people go through all kinds of dark nights of the soul, and they emerge very often transformed and transmuted. Having said that, there is an innate capability within the human being to see, in the shamanic sense, to begin seeing energy and seeing the reality with a capital R outside of this little r fake reality that we're in. And when you begin seeing that, you're no longer in a position to wonder what's going on, because you see what's going on. You literally see it. And this is at the heart of true gnosis. And this is something people and cultures all over the world have talked about. This is being in contact with the Tao, if you're in Taoism. This is shamanic seeing. This is being able to see the Akashic or auras or whatever, if you're coming from a slightly spiritualistic standpoint. You can look at it in so many different ways, being able to dream awake, to lucid dream, to actually experience the, what is, as opposed to what you think is. Because as soon as you're thinking it and you're not directly apprehending it, you're using the dragon's operating system, and it's never going to let you see clearly.
What are then the ways to get into your heart, out of your head?
Let me go into the material that I'm presenting here. So the first thing that I invite readers of Get Out of Here Alive to do is to consider the nature of the construct, and this idea that there's no there, that it's all a creation of consciousness or the imagination. And I go into different aspects of contemporary science to help people bridge from the left brain approach to this material into a more maybe centered, or I don't even like into the right brain, but more of a holistic appreciation of what's going on. So we have this idea that like quantum physics is really kind of bipolar in a way. And on the one hand, it wants everything to be this quantum nothingness where everything is entangled. And on the other hand, it wants to always find the elementary particles. And I call that Newtonianism light. That's just materialism with a little bit of a veneer of mysticism or something like that. But it's deeply materialistic at the same time. So there is no there. I also ask people to consider the power of the observer effect, and how we have scientific experiments that show that your observation can change the outcome of the experiment. It's phenomenal. People want to downplay that as if that's just a micro level effect. And I propose that it's a macro effect, and that it is the operational quote unquote truth of this realm. It's how things work. This realm is produced by and sustained by the observer effect. And the dragon, for example, can take its ability to tap into our mimetic desire, which is a term coined by René Girard, this French philosopher, and use our inability to figure out what we really believe, so that we go to other sources to look up to their beliefs. And it uses that, using the news cycles and the church and the various powers of the world, to create the society that it wants to create, where we can be properly controlled and loosed on this, this loosh farm where we're just the sheeple. So the idea here is that commandeers the power of our attention. I say the godlike power of our attention to use the observer effect phenomenon, that ability to create the world that it wants for us, not the world that we want. So the first thing I ask people to do is to consider these things, that ultimately the only thing we can do is to sort of follow in the line of somebody like Neville Goddard, when he writes about, if you don't like the face that you see in the mirror, don't think that changing the mirror is going to help. Change who you are, and then your face will change. Get into the inner workings, and we get into things like going into silence. I have a whole chapter on simplicity, and another chapter on the power. I get into Thoreau and Peace Pilgrim and all these amazing people who can teach us so many lessons about returning to simplicity. I get into digital detox, the power of silence, using procrastination, using the moodling state of our consciousness, to use the Barbara Euland's wonderful phrase or word, to connect with our creativity and our ability to connect, to create from within, like from the heart space. These are all things that we can do, but they don't just occur in a flash. They occur as a lifestyle choice, as a way of conducting yourself on a daily basis, where you get more and more internal. I say it over and over again in the book. The only way out is in. You have to keep going in. There's no magic pill that will put you in connection and contact with your heart energy. It's just going there and being there more than you are in your head on a daily basis.
Are you into shape of realm at all? Are you flat earth, globe, any of that kind of thing? Have you contemplated that?
That is part of the Loosh Fest, my friend. The problem with with any of these types of scenarios, these arguments, is that they are like politics or religion. They're used to divide and conquer, to take our loosh. And ultimately, none of it is true, because there are no truths except what is perceived. So the idea is that the construct feeds back to you what you're looking for. So if you go looking for flat earth, you will find flat earth. If you go looking for globe earth, you will find globe earth. If you go looking for ice cream earth, you will find ice cream earth. And you will find tons and tons of empirical evidence to support your lens. And when you change your lens, you'll start finding evidence to support that too. And very often those things will be mutually exclusive. This doesn't work in a real reality. This is evidence that this thing we call reality is not real. It is a product of consciousness.
Mandela effect's another one of those things that we talk about. The flexibility of this place is sort of obvious in that.
Yeah, I've got a song on an album called Mandela Affected, and it gets into that a little bit. But
that's a great title.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Same kind of thing. To me, it's evidence of the malleability of the construct and our interaction with it. And what we're doing is we're not having delusions, but we are remembering maybe different timelines of things that actually did happen. I did a meme. I created a meme. Maybe today, and shared it around. Let's see if I can find it's a quote from the book, but I did it as a little meme. Let me just pull it up, and because it speaks directly to this. A critical piece of holistic self-becoming involves the deeply felt realization that our thoughts, beliefs, and intentions aren't merely mental or just imaginary events. On the contrary, they're potent forces interacting synergistically with the quantum field, the biofield of the universal mind.
When you say shit like this, dude, I love it, by the way. When you say shit like this, it makes me sort of go back to that I do create my reality and that I can change it with my thoughts, the way I feel, the way I think about things. But, and there's a big but here, dude, that I've been trying to do that shit for well over 20 years. I got awake in 2001 when I was 18 and whatever. So I've been awake, if you will, for a long damn time and asking questions and demanding this place reveal itself to me differently based on my desires, my calm approach, my lack of attachment. I've gone through the myriad of coats that I've worn with this approach, and I just don't have the confidence in it revealing itself to me as you do. In the same way, because confidence is a series of successes. And what I've successfully done is convinced myself that there are some forces outside beyond me that I am not in control of, that have me being taken for a ride, and that I'm not in control of that ride. And therefore, my desires about it don't matter. And that actually, the more I do try and make it what I would like, it actually doesn't. And so where's the switch here? Did you ever experience this where you saw this place as I just articulated to you now, and were able to actually make the leap? And if so, what was that? What straw broke that camel's back, man?
For me, it's always been a back and forth with this dynamic that you're describing. And that's part of the crucible of this world, of this construct, is that you're constantly being challenged to step into your power more and more. And it's not easy. There's nothing easy about it. And what I ultimately concluded was that whereas it's possible to have good intentions, it's possible to think certain ways and that kind of thing, it basically comes around to what you do much more than what you think, because once again, the mind is the dragons.
But if we even want to come down to that, dude, work ethic wise, and I would argue with you that is way more on point and riddled with integrity than what I would have said my spiritual path has been. And that's catching up rapidly. So if we want to talk effort, action, ability, and all those things, I've checked these shit out of that box. And it really seems like I had to move away from the amount of action and ability to make things happen in that way, because again, it was pushing things away from me, as I heard. And so therefore, the energy I was coming at it with was not, because I was not getting the results I was looking for ever. And so looked for answers. And whenever I looked for answers, there were suggestions made that I attempted to embody, empower myself with, and they seemed to further disempower or work for a little bit and then take me further off of the path, right? So what's the deal with that? Like, why?
So
why
when
is
I
that a
say
thing?
do, there's a whole category of do that is not the not do's, the things that you don't do. It's the, okay, that's where we get stuck a lot, especially in the West, is we go, go, go. And that's one of the reasons I focus on things like digital detox and doing a truther detox, where you just go off of, any channels that are talking about any conspiracy theories or anything like that. And I never engage that stuff anymore, but I at least suggest that people do that for like a week and see how they feel, because it begins to clear your head. It begins to clear your heart. You just feel better when you get off of all of that stuff, and because you get out of the field where your energy is being taken. So unless people are willing to step away and not do to begin this process that I'm describing, they really don't have a chance to get into more of the effective doings, because they've not actually centered themselves and taken back enough of their energy to empower the doings.
I see. You were coming from. I see. See, but then again, Saul, this is what my life feels like up to this point. Hey, you've been doing this, but you misinterpreted it. Actually, it's supposed to be like this, and here's another way to look at it. And I'm like, oh, fuck me, right? But each time it was a fuck me, right? You know what I'm saying? That, again, it's these new revelatory epiphanies that come through this, new look at things that are right in front of you that are like, shit, there's my glass. They were on my head the whole time. Or you've been wearing a shirt, you've just been wearing it backwards, buddy. It's these kind of things, but I run into this shit constantly. So again, Soul, what makes any of it work for anyone? Because if anything, like I said, it's now just an interpretation. It's your experience based on your soul narrative that worked great for you. But some people are great at basketball. I'm just not. And some people would try and teach me basketball. I'm just not going to be able to do that. You see what I mean? And so again, I think a lot of this as well with this sort of like sweeping empowerment, like sort of we all have access to the same amount of dope shit. I disagree hard with that. I think just like playing the piano or anything else, some people can see energies, some people can grasp the concepts and embody them in the same way you do, and some people just fucking on the struggle bus, man. And maybe that's just the way it goes,
Yeah, maybe. I believe that the basic functions that I'm describing are just natures of our consciousness. And there's a lot more to the discussion we could talk about, because there's more to the story of the relationship between the unconscious and the conscious mind than we've gotten into. And this is just what it means to be a person. And we have certain innate faculties that one can develop. It's just the way things are. We may be more locked down in the dragon's operating system. We might have a certain indoctrination into empiricism, rationality, other things that might limit us. We might have, a very negative self-image from our upbringing. We may not have self-confidence. There are lots of individual factors that could come into play to make accessing what I'm describing more difficult for certain people. I get that, sure. But anyone can access what I'm talking about. I absolutely know this to be true because I've seen people who tried everything in the world, to get well or whatever, and they begin doing some of the strange things that I do, and things start to change. It's very remarkable. I also see people getting on their own paths, following their own nose down the path of serendipity, finding things that are not on my radar screen that also work for those people. I mean, I've looked at the phenomenon of death and the afterlife and immortality from through a multicultural transhistorical lens, and people have been approaching this in their own ways in different parts of the world and in different centuries and millennia for a very, very long time. And people have developed somewhat different methodologies, but they appear to be doing the same thing, whether that's lighting the fire from within or activating your rainbow body in Tibet, or alchemically creating your philosopher's stone and going forward into eternity. They all seem to be actually the same thing. And they've been arrived at from extremely different positions. And yet that same human technology, if you will, that organic biological technology that we have, is being activated one way or another.
And so it sort of makes me think that there's no wrong way to do this. Again,
I would agree with that totally. I mean, I encourage people to absolutely do what works for them. I don't want people to do anything I say based on any sense of, me being superior or like a guru. I hate that shit.
Oh, I get that vibe from you, bro. That you're just, I can't even say it with a straight face. You're like one of the kindest, most awesome, wisdom-filled folks ever. But I'm smelling what you're stepping on that. Nobody wants to be preached to, man. Yeah, you're very inviting with the philosophy, honestly.
And I would rather people go off and make a lot of mistakes, quote unquote, and have the freedom to do that, to just really fuck up and to not even know what to do with themselves. Very often, and this happened with me when I got really sick, I was in such a state of despair, dark night of the soul, and it was at that moment that the inspiration to begin looking at energetic solutions to my problems. I would even say inner genetic solutions, because I was looking at the interface between energy and genetics. I had this radical notion, and I began pursuing different lines of research around that, like Jeremy Narby's The Cosmic Serpent, for example. Great book, these shamans, basically using their ability to see people's DNA and to basically speak to it to heal. And what? I took that idea and created an entire methodology around it that gave me my life back and has now been used by thousands and thousands of people around the world to heal themselves.
Dude, it's that kind of shit about like people who put seeds in their mouth and suck on them for a little bit before they plant them, because the plant that grows will heal you, like anything you need. It's got the specific things for your DNA specifically. So you can imagine like a garden where like, oh, that's grandpa's, that's grandma's, that's mom's, that's her plant. That's her tomato plant over there. It's got the stuff for her in it. But it's this kind of connection, to all of those things that I find reverence in, man. But again, we look around at the world, and you and I weren't raised in something like that. And most people listening to this weren't, but we crave it. We seek it, almost innately. And not just because we've seen and been raised around the exact opposite. I think there's something really true and deep in us that crave that sort of connection and that ability to heal and that sort of wisdom. It's just fascinating to me when we get into these philosophical conversations about that we came here to forget, or God's in training, and all this kind of thing. And it leads you in many different directions, man, but it's heavy, but very, very heavy. But again, the concepts and philosophies and tools and tricks that you've come up with here are really, really cool. And I dig you, man. I don't consider you a fucking guru either. And I don't like that either. I've had people say that and I'm like, no, we don't do that. Do you have anything to say on that before I ask my next question?
Well, you said it's heavy, and it is unless you don't let it be. Like, I have a novel, the first novel that I wrote of any merit was called Beginner's Luke, and I only published the first three installments of it. It's a massive novel. I kind of broke it up, and I'm going to be republishing it in its entirety the way I first envisioned it. I was offered a publishing contract by a very good New York publisher, and they wanted to break it. All this stuff happened, and I decided to self-publish it, but I didn't know what I was doing, and it's a kind of strange story. But to make a long story short, it's about this guy who is going around imagining himself into existence. And it's completely picaresque. It's got lots of fear and loathing in it. It's got, this guy is just completely out of control, having absolute, like the first place he ends up traveling to when he kind of forgets himself and goes off on the road of becoming is New Age City. And he winds up in New Age City, right? And it's just a total spoof on everything of the New Age. And he gets kicked out of New Age City and sent to Pervert City, which is the underbelly of New Age City. And it's just, all the pimps and prostitutes and druggies and everything. That's that world. And then he gets kicked out of Pervert City because he's just not meant to be in any of these places. And then he ends up kind of in a commune with these people called the Folarians who eat only foliage. It's insane stuff. So it's hilarious. It's fun. It's taking this idea and turning it into something that's laughable, but laughably true.
Yeah, it's like Animal Farm or something. It's a very on-the-nose satire. I dig the shit out of it.
Yeah.
Oh. You're a phenomenal writer, dude. You guys, again, his Substack and all that link down below. Make sure you check it out. And his book, available for download, all of them. But Get Out of Here Alive. Okay, so let me ask you that. Do you think that when we die here, we're just done and then rides over and then we just leave? Or do you think it's a permission-based thing that one could interpret as a soul trap, meaning that you've got to achieve certain things before you can be let out?
I could see how one could look at it that way. In shamanism, for example, there is a kind of guardian, in a way, that would be equated to galactic center. So everybody, they die and they kind of make their way to galactic center. So that big black hole thing, whatever that is, and whatever kind of world that we're living in. Sorry, flat earthers. It's just, take it as mythology if you need to. The Toltec shamans would call that the eagle. Tall shamans, also from Mesoamerica, would call it the Centeotl, or the great eagle. And this is this black figure that basically takes in the souls. And so when you die, the idea is that you journey. It's also, even in something like Pirates of the Caribbean, when people are going to Davy Jones's locker, same thing. They're on their way back to source, and they're going to be reabsorbed. So when you die in this model, my understanding is that you eventually make your way back to source, and source takes from you your life experience and recycles that experience. So you don't actually reincarnate, but your experiences are incorporated into consciousnesses, the consciousness of source, and it helps it evolve and change.
Then go ahead.
So to finish the story, if you have done enough work in terms of your personal power in shamanism, you can actually, having basically gone in and reabsorbed, recapitulated your life, you can hand the eagle a copy of your life, and it will let you pass, and you can go on with your consciousness and individuality intact.
Whoa.
And this is deep. This is absolutely consistent with inner alchemy. Same, very, very similar concept. If you can create that philosopher's stone, then you can actually bypass the black hole, and you can go out into the sea of eternity and have further adventures.
Okay, but we have to build up enough of our energy to be able to make a copy of ourselves and then get the hell out of here.
Yeah, and the copy of that in inner alchemy is you create a facsimile of your body that's the dream body.
This is what you're talking about earlier.
This is what I was talking about earlier. Arnold Mindell
callback. Way
was
to
a
go,
wonderful
Saul.
psychologist, a wonderful academic and psychologist back in the day. He developed process-oriented psychology, but he wrote a whole book called The Dream Body. It's a very, very interesting book. The idea is that there's a third part of you that's not it's not your conscious mind. It's not the unconscious reservoir of who you are. It is the magical mutant that was created when we accepted the dragon's operating system in the garden and suppressed our unconsciousness, our unconscious mind. And that is what John Crider calls, for example, he's a wonderful writer on inner alchemy. He calls that the ghost in the machine. This may also be the luminous child of Gnosticism. It's probably the light body. It is our divine inner child, and it is the magical, non-local part of ourselves. But it's very sleepy. And so part of the work here is to wake up the inner child, the ghost in the machine, and to learn to connect with it. And as you build up that relationship, you basically use that connection to because that is your dream body. You get to know that dream body more and more. You spend more and more time projecting into it, being in it, so that when the time comes, you can literally step out of this body into your dream body, and you have a functional vehicle to travel through eternity in.
Okay, so I dig the shit out of this. I'm gonna give my first impulse, and then you guys, we're gonna go on it. Okay, so look, first of all, I'm like, great. Now I gotta fucking spend time fucking building this dream body and thing. I was doing something else, you know, and is this something else that is to distract me from the time that I've got here, man? Maybe I want to go see a waterfall. Maybe I want to go smoke a joint, right? Do I need to just build this dream body? It's because it seems like a lot of what we do here is thinking about getting the fuck out. And so again, this sort of seems like, and just surface level here, it seems like another soul trap invitation is something for us to be able to make sure that we do this so that we don't get stuck here. So how, and that's my impulse. Okay. This is my knee jerk. That's my little kid.
I would love to speak to that, because what you're doing to do this process is you're increasing personal power. You're actually going in and healing trauma from your past. You're taking back that energy. You're putting that in your cauldron as you're packing it in and creating the Philosopher's Stone. And then you're learning to project your consciousness more and more powerfully. And what you'll tend to see when you begin doing these activities is your health improves, your relationships improve, your abundance improves. You are more fulfilled as a person in where you are, even if you're going internal more. You can do more with less. You can create more quickly. And this builds up so that there's a tangible, almost selfish rationale to do this in the here and now. And it helps you live your life much more fully. If you see what I've been able to create over my time as a creator, people are flabbergasted at all that I've been able to do, all the books I've been able to write. I've painted over 500 paintings. You know, it's an amazing body of work that I've created, just in terms of its sheer massiveness. I mean, you know, I don't know if it's any good, but there's a lot of it, right? So
I think it's great, by the way. I think
do that
awesome.
because I've been doing the energy work. I've been doing the energy work for a long time. And part of that started with my illness when I figured out how to heal myself. And that involved plugging a massive energy leak in the solar plexus, second chakra area.
But does everybody have the same thing though? Have you pinned it down to that we all just have this leak? And if we can, if everybody can.
It's called the fragmentary body. Eckhart Tolle calls it the pain body. David Wilcock calls it the original wound. Eileen McCusick, who wrote the biofield tuning, she calls it the slavery yoke. People are onto it.
But that was created through a system that we chose to come into to have an experience of being programmed so that we could figure out how to get out of that system. Do you see like the chicken and egg scenario here? Like, why would the fuck would we come in to get stuck here?
Well, we're the Ouroboros. We're the serpent consuming our own tail. We're creating and destroying simultaneously. We're self-creating and self-becoming. That's just the nature of who we are as beings. So why would the construct be any different?
Well, but time offers us change, right? Because you get to see change over duration, which is why time exists in this realm in the first place, right? So that we can see how something is affected over a duration of that unit of counting. But in that,
From a shamanic
again,
perspective, time really doesn't exist. It's totally an illusion. And the same thing with alchemy. It's that time is not really something that well, it's not what we think it is. It's all in one moment. Everything happens. It's why like your past trauma still affects you because it's still present.
see, this is the thing too, but then what would one call the moment that I was a little baby and couldn't drive a car and now I am not that and can drive a car? Like something needed to happen in between there. I just didn't snap, and not from my perspective, the occupant of this body's perspective. It's not all happening at the same time. I can think and recall. I can do my best to interpret the memory as best I can from now. But in a sense, we do feel that this is happening over a scale of time. Like you and I set a time to meet here today. So obviously there's something going on to where there's a coordinated effort for us individuals to be able to sync up on a level. And I get the whole time's not real and the relativity and things. And I do understand that. And I also get that it's very subjective. If you're doing something, it moves at a different rate than when you're doing something else. I get all of those from perspectives. But also what I'm saying is if we have the experience of what we would call time, even though we can intellectually philosophize about that there is no time, we experience something like time. And so in a system like that, we get a duration in which we are programmed to shit, to where it seems like the rest of the duration of which we attempt to break out, or just don't know we're stuck at all, or just live in suffering for the rest of it. So that was all I had to say about it.
Well, the alchemical perspective is that time is just intensities. So the duration aspect is the illusion. And I would suggest that in the dream time, we didn't experience quote unquote time in nearly the same way. And that time as we experience is probably a function of the dragon's operating system. So when you begin to learn how to project in the ways that I'm describing, to go back in time and actually re-enter a past moment, not just casually imagine it, but have the power in your projection and in your energy to be able to go back and you're there and you can smell it and feel it, almost like you're having a dream, but you're awake. That's what I meant by dreaming awake. Then you can understand how everything is just happening all at one time. It's some aspect of probably your downloaded consciousness from the dragon that divides it up.
Do you see where it seems in my mind like it's always a carrot on a string? There's always, if we're in a game where the dragon can do any damn thing it wants, then it's always got access to a sea of, your subconscious is almost like Loch Ness. There's monsters in there. There's all kinds of shit, but you don't have control over it. And it seems like there are caves that it can pump anything it wants to in there. So it seems like this never-ending cycle of you accessing old traumas you didn't know about. Sometimes you don't even get access to those because the mind shuts it down, so that you don't freak out and can function and just go get a job and keep your body, getting food in it so that you can just keep moving, right? So there's that as well. Like it seems that not everybody has even access to all of the things that would free them. We don't even know where the chains are sometimes. And it seems like that could in itself be a lifetime's worth of an endeavor. And then the question is that the way I want to spend my time, right?
Well, I can't speak to that, but yeah, it's definitely a lifetime's work. So, if it's important to you, get busy. But in terms of how busy, how our relationship to the dragon and it being able to do whatever it wants, now that is absolutely not true. Once you begin to take in enough energy and it stops being able to feed on you, it will leave you alone. And sometimes its voice will start breaking up incrementally. And this is when you begin having silence in your mind. And eventually, it's just gone.
Oh.
And when it is, it can be crushing. And you can feel freaked out and so alone, like more alone than you've ever been, until you learn how to be with yourself, because you've never been with yourself.
Dude, you hit on something massive there, because if you think about it, people are with their captors or whatever because, they're getting attention. Maybe nobody else talks to them.
Really. It's a kind of Stockholm syndrome.
Exactly. It's just fascinating, man. I've got some things I'm noting here, and we are going to get into our afterthought. Want to, of course, just remind everybody here that all the ways to find this incredible cool dude are going to be located down below. His Substack, his website, everything. Your Instagram, I'll just link it all. And also just want to remind everybody that Derek Bastian, our incredibly cool creative expansion artist who is joining us, can be found in the links down there below as well. Got a very cool garden going on over here.
That's very cool.
He's just freestyling micro welding this. And if you listen back, and so you'll catch this on the replay, that whenever you said, and you get a flash or a spark of inspiration, he bink, right when you said the word, I saw a flicker down there, and it's just
there you
cool.
Go.
The synchronicities abound. So guys, again, all the ways to find them located down below. Just want to thank you, gentlemen, again for this. We are going to go ahead and punt it over to our afterthought, which you can find down in the show description. It's the best way to support your favorite show, just short of you just mailing me checks, but I'd rather you go and get the content. If you'd like to also sign up for a week free trial, I have that enabled perpetually. So anybody that would like to go up and go, well, I don't want to pay money for it, that's fine. Just go check the stuff out and bail, guys. But want to make sure that it's offered, and want to make sure that you guys know that that is what this includes. So before we go there, Soul, let's go ahead and ask you, you get the last word, man. And I'm very curious to know your answer on this. So what gets you out of bed every single morning and keeps you moving forward?
The ability to create, the chance to create something new, whether that's art or cultivate more power or energy, or have different experiences that invite more use of my imagination and creativity. I'm just a life artist, and that's what makes me tick. And you take that away, then you take away my life.